Welcome to the Evolving Leadership Development Podcast. Each episode brings you fresh perspectives from thinkers and practitioners who are redefining leadership in the age of AI.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Evolving Leadership Development Podcast. I am your host, Panos Malakoudis, and today I'm very happy to have with us 𝐯𝐢𝐝 Riley. Now, 𝐯𝐢𝐝 is a chartered occupational and coaching psychologist in the neurodiversity in the workplace arena, but as well as many other things that have to do with well-being in the work environment. So really excited to have you here with us. 𝐯𝐢𝐝, welcome.
Thank you, Panos, and it's really good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we had a catch-up a few weeks back when we were first introduced by a good friend, and we started talking about schema therapy and about your work working with leaders. And then we went into discussing about AI and how AI is manifesting in all these conversations you've been having with leaders. So can you share a little bit of what you have observed in terms of what are these conversations revolving around with the leaders that you have as customers? What are their concerns as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, for me, when, when AI came along, I thought it was absolutely fantastic, quite intriguing. You think, what's going to happen next? But then again, I am a massive advocate for change, and I do get excited when new things are coming along if they can be of help to us. But the conversations, there is sort of this reticence in some areas. And what I tend to find is that it's an all or nothing sort of acceptance of AI, that, organizations either use it and use it very well for lots and lots of things, or they're worried to step forwards and use just some of the featured aspects of AI and how it can support individuals. And I suppose in the neurodiversity world in particular, and I always look at neurodiversity that everyone is different anyway, but there are so many aspects with regards to AI that can support people so that they can be more efficient in their jobs. If people are more supported and efficient in their jobs, then the organization is more efficient. So everybody can be happy. So there's a lot that can be done with it, but it's just that slight reticence to embrace the good aspects of AI and what it can bring along.
And that it's one of those famous cognitive biases, that all or nothing thinking, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we get that in so many ways, and it's funny that you bring that up. It's probably one of the biggest conversations we have in coaching all the time, where individuals think, well, I've either got to be all of this or all of that, or nothing there or nothing there, when in actual fact, there's always that sliding scale in between as to how we can balance things out, how we can look at situations and absolutely everything there. So yeah, I definitely agree with that, Panos. Yes.
And what is the story people are saying inside their head when they go into this all or nothing thinking? Is it, I'm going to be made obsolete? Is it that FOBO, fear of becoming obsolete? Is it, I'm too old? What are the most common themes you hear in that all or nothing thinking?
Yeah, I think there's certainly the I'm going to be obsolete, because there's the concern. And I know it's always talked about of having AI coaches that could take over that part of the world, if you like, and people could just log on and use an AI coach, and that would be absolutely fine. So there was a fear there. AI taking over other roles of our jobs, so the workforce absolutely diminishes. But, in actual fact, if we look back through history, we've had so many technological advances that have come along, and we negotiate and we use them. So, if we embrace this, we can actually use it to enhance what we do. And I would absolutely doubt, and I strongly feel about that AI is going to take over in the world of coaching, because it doesn't have empathy. So, we have to use it to the best. And if it can refine the process for a client, so whether that's in a therapeutic environment, whether it's in the coaching environment or in the workplace environment, if it can make the process more straightforward and it can take away some of that heavy lifting, guided along by the human coach, the psychologist, then I think that's absolutely fantastic because it's a better product for the client. Then, at the end of the day, that is what it's all about. It's about the client, and whether that's the client individually or the organization, it's about the client to get the best methods and best products for those.
It's interesting that you say that, and I completely agree with you. Many conversations right now in the coaching industry around are we going to be replaced? What part of our work is going to be replaced? And you mentioned very rightly that AI is not going to replace coaches because it doesn't have empathy. At the same time, coaching exists in a continuum.
Yes.
And we have really transformational things that we do as coaches. And we have less transformational things that we do as coaches, debriefing, 360 reports and stuff like that. And at the same time, allow me to add this extra dimension, which is leadership and executive coaching slightly different to a more democratized version of coaching that is available to everyone? Are leaders potentially expecting to have a human coach that is really masterful in coaching versus being coached by an AI system? What is your feeling after having worked with so many leaders and in the workplace as well?
I mean, I would say in that every person that we coach is different, and that is the absolute beauty of this. And if we segregate and place people into the executive coaching arena, yes, there are certain traits and certain expectations from executives in coaching, certain methodologies that they would expect to go forwards. However, it's not necessarily the surface level that is the actual concern or issue that needs to be negotiated. So that is the exploration that we have there, where the human can really delve into that and look for other signs such as body language, such as reactions, and building that rapport with the individual over 1 or 2 sessions to really get to the crux of the issue. So that's where I think that we can come in. But I think going back to the other point that you made, Panos, with regards to 360 assessment and psychometric testing, for example, which we can send out a link. An individual completes the psychometric test. We can have a generated report that comes back. If a coach or a psychologist is using the method of send the link, the report comes back, give the report to the client, then look out, because AI could replace, because there's no thought process there. And it's something that I've always said about 360, about psychometrics or any measures that we actually go forwards and do. The report and the generated report is just the starting point for conversation. So that's where we can go on to the next level of challenge. So therefore, it's the further sort of feedback and the depth that we go into and the analysis after that is the most important for the human to engage, to follow the lines and the threads of inquiry that come afterwards there.
Absolutely. And this is a conversation that I've been having with L&D leaders and HR leaders all the time.
Yeah.
I see it very often that they go to this organization, they go to this company, they, buy, hundreds of licenses for the 360, followed by a 30-minute or a 60-minute debrief by a coach that isn't anything but a coach. So kind of the suggestion here is really, if you are investing in the 360 with an organization, make sure there's proper coaching that comes at the tail end of that, and not just a 30 minutes or a 60-minute debrief of here's how you read the survey and what do you want to do next.
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding the context, understanding when you took the survey, when you answered the questions, what were your moods at the time, how were you feeling, what was happening around you, what was impacting you, what could have swayed those decisions in either a more positive or more negative way, what could have skewed that information that you placed in. And that's the conversations that open up afterwards.
Absolutely. And we need leaders to have a say in this, not just be consumers.
Yes.
But if they're getting from their HR department or from their leadership department, leadership development, just a generic 360, they need to say, okay, what is the real value here? How can I learn? How can I grow through this?
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna take you into some rather controversial topic, and I'm really curious about your opinion. And I'm coming from the learning and development industry, and we love our psychometrics. we love the colors and the hats and the archetypes and this and that. At the same time, when I was studying for an undergraduate degree in psychology, I learned that in the domain of psychology, there's only one that is properly recognized as a valid psychometric tool, which is the Big Five. But if you go in the learning and development industry, everybody's going crazy about those psychometrics. So I would really be interested to hear, your opinion in this. Where is the value of those psychometrics? Are they really valid? And is there any room for everything other than the Big Five?
Yeah, I mean, controversial, and you promised me that you would take me to a controversial question and topic. Yeah, and I'm going to answer. So with regards to psychometrics, are they valid? Well, when we're looking for information, we need to have as much information as possible. Let me use an example. I actually use a psychometric to measure psychological safety in teams, so that can provide individual reports and also a team report, which is absolutely great. Does it absolutely nail the psychological safety in the team? Probably not. However, in conjunction with other methods of data collection, so that could be one-to-one discussions, it could be working groups, it could be surveys, the whole plethora of information gathering, which we would do, psychometrics adds another dimension. And if we're looking to develop a leadership development program that is going to be including psychological safety, which I would add is probably a good idea to include that into a leadership development program to work on that, it does give us a start point for conversation. Now, through trust and developing the trust there, we can use a team report to actually draw in why people might or might not feel psychologically safe. So we start that conversation. We start to develop trust. So I think the answer to that, is it valid? I would say that it is a useful tool in combination with other tools that we would use. And any good psychologist wouldn't just rely on one piece of information or evidence, would they, Panos? You know that.
So it's not about validity of the instrument itself. It is, I hear you say, it is about how we use it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
probably don't use it as an assessment, but
Definitely
rather
not.
as an extra signal data point that you
Yes.
can put into kind of a more holistic approach.
Absolutely. And I know that organizations do like the psychometrics and the reports. And like you mentioned, the colors, the hats, and, the personalities and everything there, which people proudly tell you what color they are sometimes, which again is another conversation to have about, well, that's not necessarily fixed and it could be fluid. But the reason I mention that is that, they do engage people, that they think, okay, I understand this because there's some colors, there's something tangible there that I can understand where I fit into this pattern that's being presented or shown to me, which then can lead on to other learning in other areas. So we have that anchor and then we can build on that in other areas.
So true. In a way, it is about understanding some archetypes, but avoiding using these as stereotypes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. Now, going back a little bit on the kind of the conversation that you'll be having with leaders and going back into all these cognitive biases, if there was one thing you could ask each leader to practice or reflect on or journal potentially, to kind of try between sessions with their coach to try to reflect and create some self-awareness about their place in this new world of AI and the nice positive disruption that it sometimes uses, what would that advice be?
Yeah. Well, I would tend to look at, I call it the heavy lifting. So if I was to probably use an example of myself, it would be things like report writing or being able to, complete a report, which yes, would be checked over by, afterwards, but using tools to do that. But it's that heavy lifting. If you spent a long time, talking to someone or engaging, taking all the notes and various things, then it can be quite draining. So to have some support mechanism to assist that would refine the process and it would allow the client to have a better experience, a more thorough experience. So You know, we're not taking it away from the coach or the psychologist. We're not taking that away. What we're doing is adding and supporting in that way. So it's that heavy lifting. And I think, you know, with regards to the leaders and in the working environment, is what are the pain points of their members of staff or their employees in their teams? What are the specific points that are causing them pain, which are potentially the speed bumps that are halting them from being able to go forwards and do their job in a really efficient manner? Now, it could be, let's delve into the neurodiversity or neurodivergence world, and it could be someone with dyslexia that really struggles on getting started on a document. But once they've got that start line and they've got a few ideas, that yeah, got it. Massively creative. And often we see that in people with dyslexia. So what is the problem of just giving Copilot a nudge and getting started on a particular topic and then picking it up once we've got there? Go along with it, you know, and that can be very beneficial. It just gets us over that start point. And, you know, let's face it, again, you know, when we're studying, it's that start point that's the worst. And then the next challenge is, how do we stop once we get rolling? So it's things like that. It's taking away these roadblocks that we have. Let people use AI to actually enhance what they're doing. And if they're finding pain points, then use AI to come over those pain points.
And you mentioned neurodiversity, and I will take you there in a second, because that is an area that fascinates me. But before we do that, you mentioned something really interesting that I absolutely love, which is not just say we have to, in our teams. Let's say I'm a leader and we have to, you know, we're discussing about how can we use AI in our organization. We can't just go to the teams, to the organization, and say, listen, AI is here. We have to figure out a way to use it, right? You mentioned that. Find the pain points. Find how it can be useful for people.
Yes.
There was an MIT report a couple of months ago that said 95 of all AI pilots fail. And one of the reasons that they failed was that they failed to make, or perhaps the leadership teams failed to make a link to what's in it for the people, versus just, this is a new technology, we have to use it, as if we just installed a new tool and the IT team told us that we need to start using it, right?
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about also kind of the work that Richard Boyages has done about his intentional change theory, which says, start with the ideal future.
Absolutely.
Work with the teams, say, what is that ideal future you want to achieve? Because, and here's, you know, what I would love your opinion, is one thing to say, AI is here, we cannot avoid it, we have to use it, which is kind of a threat response, versus AI is here. What is the ideal version of the future that we want to achieve with it?
Yeah.
It can do many things, right? So how is that manifesting in your own practice?
Yeah, my own practice. Well, what I would look at is, you know, and I think the example you used there, what is the ideal future? And, you know, if I was to answer that question, what's the ideal future for me? I want to continue as a psychologist. I want to be able to research. I want to be able to continue consulting, and I want to be able to continue helping people so that I can really help them with their wellness, overcoming obstacles, coaching them through, and all of those things, you know, to help people. Now, working back from that, what tools are available to me to be able to do that in the most efficient way? Now, I have to be totally honest, you know, I'm 54 years of age. I don't want to do 17, 18-hour days anymore. Maybe when I was younger, I would have done, but I don't advocate for that anymore because it's not healthy at all. I do like to have a good work-life balance. So if there is anything that I can use that can cut down those working hours, but still maintain that quality of what I do, so I'm still maintaining that. So I think the answer for me, really, Panos, is that I would always ask myself the question, really, you know, so it's almost like a research question. Would AI be able to pick up some of these pain points that I have? And that could be anything from, you know, a template. It could be formatting a document. It could be absolutely anything. It could be, you know, dictate. It could be capturing a transcript from a conversation and then transferring it to a document that can be checked through, you know, all of those things. What could I do that would reduce those hours but maintain the quality? And AI is just another one of those tools, because obviously the other things that we have in our toolbox are making sure that we have a good night's sleep, making sure that we have plenty of breaks, making sure that, we're keeping ourselves healthy, making sure that we're keeping up with current research and all of these things, which again, could AI help me with that to an extent with the research? Could it lead me in a certain direction? Could I use that to enhance that, but not taking away my own analytical skills, because that's a fundamental part of psychology. And it's also good fun, delving into the information and really, really analyzing it ourselves. That's the fun part of that, but it's just having that little bit of support. So looking at the whole picture as to what tools are available to me.
It is having that level of support as well. And you're making me think, Sean, how important are coaching skills for managers these days, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't expect that people will just automatically ask questions in that way, because especially if they're having a threat response. So enter the leader as a coach that can help their organization ask these questions, either on one-on-one or kind of the entire group. Right? How are you leading by example as a leader? How are you showing how you're using the systems? Right? So it starts with the leaders. If the leader is not showing those behaviors, if the leader is not sharing how they're using AI to take off that heavy lifting, but also how are they signaling that, listen, it's okay, it's safe. I know it's an unknown arena that we are entering. It doesn't need to be half empty glass. It can be glass, right? So the signal that the leader sent their organization is so very important.
Absolutely. And there was a couple of things that actually sprung out as you were talking there. Was, the need to develop trust in a team, in a group. So the leader, building trust in the team, psychological safety into the team. And also, I think the actual methodology is, well, quite simply a servant leadership way forwards, in saying, well, what can I do as a leader to support you so that you can maximize your potential? That's servant leadership, but it also ties inextricably into coaching, or the coaching methodology, in that we're asking, not telling. So by asking ourselves, and the questions that I ask myself is, what can I do to support myself in the best possible way so that I can maximize my potential, so that the output is being able to look after my clients and ensure that they are getting the best possible service? I would ask that question. Then the leader could also ask that to the individuals. What would you like me to do so that I can support you in your job role with regards to AI? What are the pain points, and what can we do to really make sure that you can do your job to the best of your ability? And I think the other thing with regards to, leadership and management of teams is that a lot of leaders and managers get quite involved in the actual process as to how we get to an end product. Again, I think it's sometimes step back a little bit from there, because let people be creative with how they do things and share. So we've got this sort of like team that is really building itself and fermenting away and developing. And we don't really, I wouldn't say we don't care about the process. Yes, of course we do, but it's not really our concern. Let the team have their process and let them interact and do that. Let's be concerned about the quality of the product at the end to be the best that we can. And if there's things that are interjected, then that's absolutely fine. But with a self-generating team, and again, this does slip into the neurodiversity sphere again, that we've got this really creative and diverse team, ideally, then peer-peer support, everyone is going to develop, because there will be some people within the team that look at AI and think, I love it. This is brilliant. We can do so much with it. However, they might be the type of person or the type that would go too far forwards with that. So therefore, we've got other people around to balance that. But what we can do is get the best solution for that team by the skills that we've already got in the team.
There's so much that I love in what you said there. To begin with, you kind of reminded me what I describe as leaders who are being coached become better coach leaders.
Yes, absolutely.
right? But let's go into the neurodiversity part, Sean, for a moment. And I'll share an experience that I had a couple of years ago where I was teaching some coach colleagues about the intentional change theory and about the neuroscience behind change. And we were talking about the default mode network of the brain. And we're talking about the task positive network of the brain and how as coaches, we need to frame the questions to activate that part of
Yes.
the brain, that part of the brain. And I loved it. And I've read a lot of books around that. And then a good friend of mine from Sydney, certified coach, he said, but it doesn't work for ADD, Panos. And I said, wow, tell me more. And by tell me more, he sent me an entire book to read. But what basically he was saying is that, you know what, in some cases of ADD or ADHD, the DMN and the TPN part of the brain fire at the same time, which is not what happens in a neurotypical scenario.
Uh-huh.
And I
Yeah.
said, wow, this is fascinating. And how can I account for this? So basically my question is, and I don't want us to necessarily go into the deep details of neuroscience, but
Mhm.
for a leader, and you work with them, you've worked with a lot of them, especially in that context of neurodiversity in the workplace, how important it is for leaders to understand those nuances that they might have in their teams, those neurodiversity nuances that might exist as they're trying to help their organization evolve into this new future for AI.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it is absolutely fundamental. I think you gave a great example there about, you said, can you give me more information? You had a book to read, which is quite interesting. And I suppose that links into a story where I was actually coaching someone with autism, and I asked them, I said, could you tell me a little bit about yourself? And that was a big mistake at that point until I actually refined it, because they were just overwhelmed and thought, wow, okay, so what part of myself would you like to know about? So it sometimes it needs that little bit more guidance. But like you say, without going into the depths of neuroscience with this, I absolutely feel that, we need to understand that people will accept questions and they will process a question in a completely different way, which can lead to so many different answers. And whilst we want creativity and individual responses, absolutely, what we don't want to do is put someone into a position of feeling overwhelmed or that they can't answer that question that has been posed to them. So to have an understanding of different neurotypes, I think, is absolutely fundamental, because everyone is different in the organization. With regards to neurodivergence, then there is, let's say, a term that has been used to segregate or to filter so that we can understand. So a condition that has absolutely been diagnosed. Within those neurodivergences, there are also differences as well. However, there are certain traits that we can group and stereotype, which does make things a little bit easier for us. But I think the first thing is to treat people as individuals. Now, with my experience of working with neurodivergent individuals, there is sometimes a requirement to, perhaps the open coaching question that we would normally throw in to really get thought process and going, is to probably break that down a little bit more so that we can take people forwards in steps. And also we well, yourself, in coaching, if we're pure coaches, we don't mentor. However, there are times when we might need to just step in and give a little bit of a nudge, a little bit of a mentor, and that is purely to support the individual that we have with us. Now, the decision that a leader would make to actually use those skills is absolutely based on who's in front of them at the time, or what the group dynamic is at the time, whether they need to step in. So it's like, I suppose, again, we could relate it to situational leadership, that we're looking at what people need from us. And that defines whether we really open it up and allow people to go with it, or we just like, let's just help out a little bit here. Let's just refine this a little bit more and support without stepping in and doing that way. So it's just vitally important for leaders to understand that we do have a difference in the way of thinking and, the acceptance of questions, the processing of questions. So it's very important to understand neurodivergence in the workplace.
And there's not a single leader that will disagree with you. Do they do it though? So my question is, what would you propose? What would you recommend to a leader to practice or study? How can they get better at this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the more awareness, because at the moment, I spend quite a lot of time in organizations, carrying out sessions of awareness. And even at this stage, I'm just absolutely, so surprised that some organizations say, oh, this is great. We should have done this a long time ago. And think, well, I thought we got over that bridge. I really did. But it's embedding diverse teams into an organization and thinking, well, we talk about equity, we talk about diversity, inclusion, and that is such a beautiful thing. But we need to understand that with having diversity in an organization, we're going to have different ways of thinking and different ways of doing. So let's not just superficially say we want to have a diverse organization. We should have a diverse organization because we're going to have a better product that comes out the other end. Simple as that, and that's what we're looking for. So I would actually, reach to leaders and just say, let's get some awareness in there. Let's really start looking at what diversity really means, or different ways of thinking. What does it really mean for the organization? And what can we do to really harness that creativity, really harness those skills to move forwards? So we're looking at skills development, skills identification from a holistic view there. Let's get the best possible solution to these problems.
And that's a real way to do this, because there's a great risk of, and it's a risk across the complete diversity, equity, and inclusion domain, which is tokenism.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? How do we avoid a situation where we're introducing some activities or some skills building just as a token that, here's a proof we've done this,
Absolutely.
versus what is a real, honest practice for leadership, which is exactly what you said. Well, make sure it is diverse, and make sure that you're accounting for everyone's opinion, and make sure that you acknowledge the fact that there will be approaches and mindsets and theories that are just alien to you to some extent. They're totally different than what you're used to. So be open.
Absolutely. And I think the punch point that you mentioned there is something that's different to what you're used to. And in the pace of industry at the present time, it's very difficult to see something that is alien, that doesn't quite fit into how we would usually do things in usual business, and say, okay, let's change. It needs to be sort of incremental, because, like I say, the pace that we're moving at, nobody wants to throw everything to one side and pick up something new, do they? So that is the fear that we have there. It's this fear of change.
And also what we need to let go of in this day and age.
Absolutely. Get rid of the baggage.
So, unfortunately, we are at time. This is a fascinating conversation, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us.
Same.
I'm pretty sure that our audience is going to love this, and kind of the insights, some amazing insights that you shared, and that I absolutely loved. Where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Well, they can catch up with me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to have conversations with people if they want to chat more, or they can visit my website. So that's www.𝐻𝐻psychology.co.uk. They can book a no obligation appointment on there as well. So if they want to have a chat over Zoom, then I'm more than happy to engage and reach out with as many people as possible.
Thank you, Sean. And all the links and all the addresses are on the description of this podcast. I want to thank you again. We wanted to do this for a couple of months now, and we finally did it. I appreciate you so much, Sean, and have a fabulous rest of your day. And to our listeners, thank you for listening in, and see you in the next episode.